What if Rimuru's Omni-Versal Journey Part 4? By JM 1001. What if the supreme deity Rimuru visited different universes? Rimuru has become Veldanava's successor, but unlike Veldanava and Rimuru being bored decides to go on an adventure and interact with other universes, becoming more powerful and having fun as he does so. Chapter 7 Introductions. Moments before Rimuru's arrival in the Marvel Universe, Rimuru was asking Seal about their next destination. Rimuru, so Seal, where are we going now? Seal, the universe in question is similar to the previous universe, but with obvious differences in some regards. Code name, Marvel. Rimuru, oh goody, sounds fun. Seal, I suggest Master transform into his dragon form. Rimuru, oh, and why's that, Seal? Seal, like the last universe, there is currently a war going on, and in order to attract everyone's attention, it is advised for Master to descend in his dragon form. Rimuru, all right, Seal, I'll listen to your advice. Rimuru then transformed into his dragon form and not long after arrived at the designated location. Back in the present, the Avengers were all left speechless and slightly horrified at the sight before them. This individual just vaporized Thanos and his forces in an instant, and to top it all off, the Infinity Stones came to him as if they had a will of their own. After dealing with Thanos, the being was now making their way to the Avengers and their army. The Avengers, seeing this, decided to gather together and confront the individual to find out more about them. Rimuru greeted everyone like a god who has been alive for thousands of years and seen the end of creation. Hello, mortals. Strange, along with all the sorcerers, all kneeled again to Rimuru while saying in unison, Greetings, O Great One. We are honored to be in your presence. The rest of the Avengers all looked at Strange, and the sorcerers with confused looks, with even Rimuru growing surprised, before Steve stepped forward and asked the most basic questions. Steve, hello, I am Steve Rogers and you are? Rimuru, oh, apologies, where are my manners? My name is Rimuru Tempest. Thor, excuse me Rimuru, but who or what are you? I don't remember any records of you on Asgard. Rimuru answered Thor, I'll get to your question in a second, demigod, but first. Rimuru's eyes glowed with a golden light for what was perceived as a second by others as his gaze shifted over Strange and the sorcerers before curiously asking Strange, Dr. Strange, is it? You and your people seem to know who I am. Can you explain? Strange was nervous to answer, but he clearly didn't have a choice now, so he answered. Yes, Great One. It is passed down in sacred texts that a dragon with unimaginable power created the multiverse and everything in it. Rimuru pondered to himself for a moment before answering. I see. Well, I suppose you're not wrong, although I am surprised you have texts old enough to mention this. Normally, this knowledge shouldn't be known by others. The sorcerers were all left momentarily worried for their safety, especially when gods start talking about forbidden knowledge. That was until Steve spoke out, asking bluntly, So let me get this straight. You're the creator of the universe. You're God. Rimuru, in short, yes. The Avengers were all surprised to find out about Rimuru, but Thor still had his question unanswered. Thor, but if that is true, how come I've never heard of you? As far as I know, not even the gods have heard of you. Rimuru, normally it wouldn't have been necessary for you to know. Your life and what happens to your universe is for all of you to decide. Tony, well, if it wasn't necessary for us to know about any of this, why are you here? Rimuru, I am traveling the Omniverse, but just before arriving, I sensed what was going on, and because of Thanos' actions, I decided to interject. Banner, I don't quite understand, Mr. Rimuru, sir. You see, Thanos in our timeline already accomplished his goal and erased half of life in this universe. Why would you need to interject now? Why not before? Rimuru, because unlike last time, Thanos wouldn't have stopped at just this universe. This time, he would have completely destroyed this universe and rebuilt a new one as its god using those stones. But years after, he would grow unfulfilled and set his sights on conquering the rest of the multiverse, destroying all realities until there was nothing left but just the one he ruled over. And that is something I can't let stand. Hearing this, all the Avengers realized just how much trouble they were in if Thanos had truly gotten his hands on those stones. Banner, not to ask too much, but is it possible you could give the stones back to us? We need to send them all back to their timelines. Otherwise, a lot of nasty timelines are going to open up. Rimuru, no, I'm keeping these. The Avengers grew uneasy hearing Rimuru's answer, thinking they might just have to try and force Rimuru, a god, to give the stones back. But before anyone did something stupid, Rimuru continued to state, "But leave it to me. I'll send a copy of these stones back to their original timelines." The Avengers were all surprised that Rimuru could even do that, but it put everyone's mind at ease. Rimuru then suddenly closed his eyes and, with the help of Seal, sent a version of the stones back to the timelines they belonged to. The Avengers, not knowing what Rimuru was doing, just stood there quietly, looking at each other with puzzled expressions until Rimuru opened his eyes, saying nonchalantly, "All done." The Avengers just looked at Rimuru confusedly, with Cap asking, "What is done?" Rimuru, "The stones are all handled." Banner, "What, right this moment? You already sent them back." Rimuru, "Yep, all done." The Avengers were all completely gobsmacked, as it became evident just how powerful Rimuru was, but they also couldn't help but feel grateful. Steve, "Thank you, Rimuru." Rimuru, "It's no problem." Tony, "Well, if that's all taken care of, what do you intend to do now?" Rimuru, "I think I'll find somewhere me and my wife can stay for a few days to rest and meditate. Maybe explore this world a little before continuing on our journey." The Avengers all looked at each other with an array of emotions. Some clearly didn't mind, while others were clearly more worried about their world playing host to a universal god. However, more troubling was the fact that this being just mentioned he had a wife. Tony seemed to pick up on this point. "I'm sorry, wife." Rimuru, "Yeah, my wife." Rimuru then called out, "You can come out now, my dear." Seemingly appearing out of thin air, Seal manifested herself before everyone. Most of the Avengers were left completely captivated by her godly beauty, almost forgetting their surroundings, until Seal joined Rimuru's side, bringing everyone back to reality. Rimuru, "This is my wife, Seal. Why don't you introduce yourself, dear?" Seal, "I am Seal Tempest, the goddess of knowledge and wisdom, and wife to Rimuru Tempest." The Avengers now felt even more complex and uneasy about having the Earth play host to two gods. That was until Black Panther, King T'Challa, stepped forward and spoke out. "T'Challa, my people and I would be more than honored to welcome the two of you to Wakanda as guests." T'Challa's words surprised Rimuru, with Rimuru letting out a surprised "oh" in the process. Rimuru looked to Seal for her reaction, only to receive a reassuring nod of approval. With Seal's confirmation, Rimuru answered T'Challa, "I appreciate that, King T'Challa. It appears that we'll be in your care during our time here." With that now decided, Rimuru and Seal followed T'Challa back to Wakanda, and everyone else either went home or began the cleanup after the war. That night, Rimuru and Seal were introduced to the rest of the royal family of Wakanda, and joined the people in enjoying a celebration of victory against Thanos and his forces. That night, a world celebrated victory as lost ones were reunited with loved ones. Chapter 8, Overflowing Power. Rimuru and Seal spent the night in a luxurious room, which was given to them just before last night's celebrations. The two enjoyed themselves last night, being shown the finest cuisine and drink Wakanda had to offer, as well as a thrilling fireworks display, with a lot of cheers and celebration coming from the Wakandan people. When the two awoke the following day, They greeted each other with a passionate kiss before getting up to start their day. Seal, what should we do today, Master? Rimuru, I would like to analyze those stones more. Considering they came to me on their own proves they have a will of their own. Seal, yes, I agree. I would also like to find out more about them. The two got dressed and, using universal detect, saw King T'Challa sitting down for breakfast with his family. So the pair decided to make their way there. When they arrived, T'Challa and his family greeted the couple and invited Rimuru and Seal to sit with them for breakfast, to which Rimuru and Seal graciously accepted, joining the family for a lovely breakfast of local cuisine. While eating, Rimuru asked T'Challa, "Say, King T'Challa, is there anywhere peaceful and out of the way where myself and Seal could meditate?" T'Challa thought about it for a moment before answering, "I believe I have just the right place. I'll be happy to bring you there after we finish our meal." The group continued to finish their meal, with the royal family giving T'Challa all the updates of what needed to be taken care of throughout Wakanda. When everyone had finished eating, T'Challa showed Rimuru and Seal to a Royal Talon fighter, an aircraft unique to Wakanda. T'Challa then offered to fly the duo to a quiet piece of land just 15 miles from the city. Rimuru agreed to T'Challa's offer, and it wasn't long after that they arrived at their destination. Before disembarking the airship, T'Challa spoke to the duo. "This land is unused, and not many people pass through here." Rimuru, "I appreciate this, T'Challa. Me and Seal will probably be here for a while, so please don't let us keep you. I'm sure you're quite busy already." T'Challa, "No worries. Before I leave, take this. It's a communicator. When you're done here, press this button and someone will come and pick you up." T'Challa handed Rimuru a small communications device with a simplistic design. Rimuru took the device and thanked T'Challa again. T'Challa then left back to the city, and Rimuru found somewhere nice to meditate, with Seal returning to Rimuru's soul. Rimuru then found a flat rock under a luscious tree to meditate on, so he sat down and began analyzing the stones with Seal. Rimuru, "How's it looking, Seal?" Seal, "These stones are strange, to say the least. They radiate with cosmic-level energy, which is deadly to most organic beings." Rimuru, "Well, the cosmic energy would explain why they have a will of their own." Seal, "Indeed. Further tests have shown each one of these stones governs an individual aspect of reality, and because Master already holds dominion over all aspects of reality, they have chosen to serve you." Rimuru, "I see. Can you give a breakdown of each of the stones individually?" Seal, "Of course. First is the Time Stone. This stone holds power over time itself. The second is the Mind Stone. This stone enhances mental and psionic abilities and gives access to thoughts and dreams of other beings. Third, the Soul Stone allows the user to steal, control, manipulate, and alter both living and dead souls. Fourth, the Space Stone allows the user to exist in all locations, move any and all objects anywhere through realities, warp or rearrange space, and teleport themselves and others to any place in the omniverse. Fifth, the Reality Stone allows the user full control over all of reality. Lastly, sixth, the Power Stone. It allows the user to access and manipulate all forms of energy, enhance their physical strength and durability, and enhance any superhuman power or abilities that the user has. Together, they form the Infinity Stones. Rimuru, "Geez, these are some scary stones just to leave around. What the hell were the gods of this universe thinking in creating these stones?" Seal, "Well, further tests have shown that these stones only work within their own respective universes." Rimuru, "Sigh, so they're basically useless once we leave this multiverse. Well, what should we do now with them?" Seal, "While Master's analysis is correct, I believe that if these stones were to be cracked open to their nucleus, it would be possible to obtain some of the original essences of this cosmic energy, which would greatly bolster Master's power. Rimuru, all right, I give you my permission to implement this plan. With confirmation given, Seal immediately began implementing her plan and began cracking the infinity stones open. In that moment, Rimuru felt an explosion of power from within, greatly increasing his own power, almost to the point of overflowing. It was taking everything Rimuru had to contain this new power-up, with the area all around him beginning to smash and rip apart under his mere presence. Rimuru, sensing this, enclosed himself in the most powerful barrier he could muster and continued to meditate, trying to get a grip on this new power of his. Shuri, who is T'Challa's sister, picked up on the influx of energy created by Rimuru and decided to take a team to investigate immediately, deeming it a potential threat to Wakanda, not knowing that it was where Rimuru was meditating. When Shuri arrived at the location with her team of experts, they had seen something that they had never seen before. The ground looked like it had been ripped apart and completely destroyed for miles in all directions, leaving everyone completely baffled by the sight. Shuri and her team continued to venture forward to the heart of the devastation. It wasn't until Shuri saw Rimuru encased in a green barrier that she realized what had caused this devastation. Shuri then turned to her team and issued her commands. I want a 5-mile perimeter around this place, and every personnel down here monitoring the situation. Within the hour, a perimeter had been created around Rimuru, and a monitoring team had been established. Chapter 9: Fixing Problems. It had been a couple of hours since Rimuru's accidental flux of power, with Shuri creating a monitoring team to observe the situation. It was then when T'Challa arrived and began asking for a rundown of the current situation. T'Challa, what's the situation, Shuri? Shuri, my team and I picked up a large signature of radiation similar to the infinity stones coming from this location. It wasn't until we ventured in that we saw Rimuru at the center. T'Challa, all right, let's go take a look. T'Challa and Shuri ventured into the heart of the problem where they saw Rimuru floating in the center of the devastated land, encased in a green barrier with a violent energy radiating all around him. Shuri, I'm not sure what's going on in there, but I believe Rimuru sensed what was going on around him and has enclosed himself in some form of barrier to protect us. T'Challa, most likely. Has there been any movement or further fluctuation since? Shuri, no, not since that last one our radars picked up earlier. T'Challa took a breath of relief before answering, all right, good work. For now, keep monitoring the situation, have team members swap shifts through the night if it comes to that, and keep me posted. Shuri, on it, brother. T'Challa then left back to the city, and Shuri along with her team continued to monitor Rimuru. Meanwhile, Rimuru and Seal were doing their best to calm the overflowing power. Rimuru yelled to Seal, far out, how much longer, Seal? Seal, finished, Master. The analysis is complete, beginning integration of cosmic energy. Rimuru had been asked to contain this raging energy for hours while Seal analyzed its properties and history. Rimuru hadn't been this exhausted in thousands of years, with Seal nonchalantly stating, upon further analysis of the original essence of cosmic energy, it appears this essence originates from 4 conceptual entities: death, entropy, infinity, and eternity. Rimuru, who was still catching his breath, asked exhaustedly, right, well, don't expect me to trap infinity again. How long will the integration take? Seal, hard to say right now, but I believe if Master were to help out by better understanding the power of cosmic, then the process might proceed faster. Rimuru answered, very well, and then began delving deep into better understanding the power of cosmic while getting a grip on this newfound increase in power. Rimuru continued to meditate for the following 2 days and nights, with Shuri and her team members switching out only to get some rest. T'Challa would also occasionally make an appearance to check up on the situation and get a report from Shuri. It wasn't until the morning of the third day that one of Shuri's team members noticed the energy that had been fluctuating from Rimuru had finally subsided and informed Shuri of the development immediately. Shuri then informed T'Challa as she made her way to Rimuru. A few minutes later, T'Challa also arrived and joined Shuri at the site, with T'Challa asking, "What's the status here?" "Shuri, it was reported this morning that the energy surrounding Rimuru has finally subsided, but apart from that, he still hasn't moved. However, it was then when the barrier around Rimuru cracked and fell apart like glass shattering. Rimuru's body then began hovering just a few meters in the air before he finally opened his eyes, revealing rainbow-colored eyes that radiated power and fluctuated between the many colors of the Omniverse." T'Challa and Shuri looked on in amazement and shock as Rimuru's eyes had become a mixture of colors, like a universe's reflection. However, it became quickly evident that merely standing in front of Rimuru's line of sight right now would be detrimental to one's health, as T'Challa and Shuri both felt like something deep within them was being torn apart. Rimuru was still adjusting to his newfound power, but quickly realized what was wrong with Shuri and T'Challa. Adjusting his presence to a level mortals could handle, he began slowly descending toward the pair before gratefully stating, "Apologies for keeping you both away from your work, King T'Challa and Shuri." "T'Challa, please, it was nothing. We were just a little worried about the sudden surge of energy." Rimuru then looked around, realizing the devastation he caused to the surrounding area, and had a bit of a shocked expression. "Rimuru, I am sorry. I thought I caught it all before it got out of hand. Here, let me fix this." Rimuru, with a wave of his hand, instantly fixed the land, returning it to its former state. T'Challa, Shuri, and her team all looked around in amazement, seeing the once devastated lands return to their pristine beauty. "Rimuru, if you don't mind, I have somewhere I need to visit quickly. I will be back in a moment, and again, I apologize for the destruction I caused and for keeping you both from your duties." "T'Challa, please, Mr. Rimuru, you have nothing to apologize for." And T'Challa looked around before continuing, "And if my eyes aren't playing tricks on me, then you have already fixed any damages." Rimuru smiled and instantly teleported away, leaving behind a bewildered T'Challa and Shuri. With Shuri cheekily saying, "Gods, huh?" T'Challa laughed, giving her a look that says, "I know, right?" as the two made their way back home. Rimuru had teleported outside an empty block of land, only to see Wanda Maximoff crying outside of what was supposed to be her and Vision's future home, where they planned on starting a family. Rimuru slowly approached Wanda without her realizing it, as she was still engulfed in her grief after reading a letter left to her by her dead lover. Rimuru then rubbed her shoulder as he said, "It's beautiful here. I can see why he picked it." Wanda was a bit startled and looked up to see Rimuru, but with her sorrow and anger rising, she bluntly asked, "What are you doing here? Trying to comfort me?" Rimuru answered like an understanding parent, "It's okay. I get it. Grief is hard." "Wanda, and what would a godly being such as yourself know anything about grieving?" Rimuru looked up to the sky, taking a deep breath before stating, "A lot, actually. I wasn't always like this." Rimuru paused before placing a finger on Wanda's forehead. Suddenly, memories of the Falmouth invasion played through Wanda's mind. She witnessed memories of human soldiers on horseback cutting down the innocent as they tried to flee their burning homes. Images of the Otherworlders' sinister smiles as they slaughtered those nearby. And lastly, Rimuru kneeling defeatedly in the center of a smoldering town surrounded by the dead, including one of his loved ones. When Wanda came to, she began hyperventilating from the images she saw and the grotesqueness of it all. Wanda was no stranger to dealing with death, but she had never seen anything like that before. It didn't take long before she was asking Rimuru, "Those were your memories. What did you do after? How did you deal with all that death?" "Rimuru, nothing good, I can assure you. I returned their sentiment and slaughtered their army. Wanda, hearing this, was shocked but at the same time understood, with herself beginning to enter that same mindset. But before those thoughts could fester any longer, Rimuru continued to speak. But there was a light of salvation at the end of the dark abyss I was in. I gained the power to revive everyone I had lost, and so I offer you that same light. Wanda looked at Rimuru with an inquisitive expression and asked, "What do you mean?" Rimuru, "I'm offering you the same salvation I received. If you would like, I can bring back vision, and you can live happily from now on." Wanda, "Really? You would do that for me?" Rimuru, "I will if you want it so." Wanda didn't think twice before answering, "I do. I want that so badly." Rimuru smiled, and with a wave of his hand, a body wrapped in light started to form until Vision fully materialized in a human form. Wanda, seeing Vision, rushed to him, falling to her knees and hugging him, crying into his chest as she said, "You're back. It's really you, you're back. I missed you so much." Vision looked down at Wanda, confused. Having his memories intact, he knew he died at Thanos' hand. He then reciprocated Wanda's hug and kissed her forehead, still not knowing how he was even here. Rimuru then interjected into their moment, saying, "Enjoy, live the life you always wanted." Wanda looked at Rimuru with gratefulness, saying, "Thank you, I can never repay this debt." Rimuru smiled, stating, "Don't worry about it. Just live the life you two always wanted. You've more than earned it." Before vanishing from their sights, he teleported back to Wakanda, leaving a confused Vision and a grateful Wanda. Chapter 10, A Little Friendly Chaos. Rimuru arrived back in Wakanda in T'Challa's office. He found him in the middle of handling paperwork concerning Wakanda, until Rimuru suddenly appeared out of nowhere, startling him. T'Challa, "Oh Rimuru, it's just you, you scared me." Rimuru, "Ahahaha, sorry T'Challa, you should have seen your face though. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know me and Seal will be away tonight. We're just going to take in the sights of this world." T'Challa, "Okay, no problem. Just when you come back, at least knock first." Rimuru, no promises." With that, Rimuru teleported away again, leaving T'Challa to his work. Rimuru had warped to New York City and was currently overlooking the entire city, standing on top of the tallest building in New York, the World Trade Center. Seal decided to materialize and clung to Rimuru's arm as she asked, "What should we do first?" Rimuru, I don't know, but let's have some fun." Rimuru then picked up Seal in a bridal carry and leaped off the building with Seal still in his arms. The two laughed as they descended, with Rimuru perfectly aiming for an alleyway. To avoid causing any destruction, he stopped their fall by hovering just inches from the ground. Rimuru then put Seal down and came up with an idea of what they could do. Rimuru, "I've got an idea. We're gonna need to change our clothes, so why not get all dressed up, go to a fancy place for dinner, and mess with some rich snobs?" Seal smiled as she said, "You had me at dinner." Rimuru and Seal then altered their clothes, with Rimuru adorning an all-black suit and tie, while Seal manifested a black shoulderless dress that flowed down to her shins, paired with black high heels and a small white leather purse. The two then altered their eye color, with Rimuru going with black eyes and Seal going with brown. Rimuru, "Well, we look the part. Now we just need the ride to go with it." Rimuru then, with a wave of his hand, manifested a black convertible Lamborghini Aventador. The two then got in and Rimuru floored it, leaving the back alley they were in. The two flew through New York, enjoying the car's speed, and occasionally using their powers to move any cars that got in their way. While they were driving, Rimuru asked Seal to make a phone call to Tony Stark to get them a reservation at the most expensive restaurant there is, to which he obliged after getting over the surprising phone call from Seal. Rimuru and Seal finally arrived at a very luxurious hotel. This place was world-renowned for its exquisite fine dining experience, and top-of-the-line rooms with incredible views of New York and the harbor. When the two pulled into the driveway, Rimuru and Seal drew a lot of attention from women and men alike, with Seal gaining the attention of many men. Rimuru got out of the car, handed his keys to the valet, and walked around to the other side of the car to open the door for Seal. As Seal got out of the car, a rich guy who had his eyes on Seal approached Rimuru arrogantly, stating, "Hey kid, why don't you run along and leave the adults alone to play? Go get yourself an ice cream or something." As the man stated this, he tucked a couple of grand into Rimuru's pocket. Rimuru smirked and stated, "Oh, and how would you even be able to play, considering you probably can't even pay for dinner? And I don't know what you even intend to do after dinner. What, whip out your little pin-sized dick so she can laugh at you?" The man was just baffled at Rimuru's insults until Rimuru took out the money. The man just stuffed into his pocket and stuffed it back into the man's pocket, saying, "Here, take this back. You'll probably need it more than me. Why don't you go get yourself an ice cream or something? P.S. We're married, dumbass, so it would never have worked out." Rimuru and Seal continued to walk away, leaving a confused and baffled man just standing there. As Rimuru and Seal got closer to the restaurant, Rimuru materialized a credit card in his pocket and transferred all that man's money into his account, all 15 million of it. When Rimuru and Seal made it to the reception desk, the reception woman asked for their reservation. Rimuru stated, "Yes, there should be a reservation under Stark for two." The woman froze for a moment before regaining her confidence and showed Rimuru and Seal to a private booth. They started their night by ordering fine wine and entrees, enjoying their time. Then came the main course, which was a duck ragu for Seal and wagyu steak for Rimuru. The two continued to enjoy their night when Rimuru came up with a game they could play. Rimuru, "Hey Seal, let's play a game." Seal, "A game?" Rimuru, "Yeah, a game. Whoever can get someone to do the most embarrassing thing wins." Seal, "And what does the winner get?" Rimuru, "The winner gets to choose one thing the loser has to do." Seal, "I'm in." Rimuru, "All right, I'll go first." Rimuru then looked around the room and spotted an elderly man in his late 50s wearing an obvious wig. "All right, I've picked. Just over your shoulder to the right, a few tables down, the elderly man with the wig." Seal then carefully looked over to see the man in question. Seal, "All right, I see him." Rimuru then stated, "Any moment now he's going to get up for the bathroom. Just wait." The two then eyed the man, and a moment later he got ready to stand up. As the man stood up, Rimuru flicked his finger and the man's wig came flying off. The man was embarrassed and bent down to pick his wig up, and it was at this moment Rimuru made the man let out the loudest fart, which silenced the restaurant. Rimuru and Seal could barely contain their laughter, watching as the man desperately ran to the bathroom, with the entire restaurant watching him as he did so. Seal, "Ahata." Rimuru and Seal were giggling into their hands, trying their best to contain their laughter. Rimuru, "Ahaha, okay, my turn." Rimuru then looked around again and spotted his victim. "I've got it, the guy and the girl to the left of us, 5 tables away." Seal then did the same, taking a sip of her wine and found the people Rimuru meant. Seal, "I see them." Rimuru then stated, "The man at the table doesn't realize his date is also a man." The two then watched as the waiter brought over their meals and the two began to eat. It wasn't until moments later that the crossdresser felt something not right in their stomach, and in the next moment, the person in question stood up and violently had an accident in their clothes. Rimuru and Seal couldn't contain their laughter anymore and laughed so hard they almost fell off their chairs. The waiting staff told everyone that they were closing the restaurant for tonight and that their meals would be refunded. Rimuru and Seal could barely make it out the door, still laughing as they did so. The two then walked to the reception of the hotel, still laughing, with Rimuru asking, "We're gonna need a room for tonight." The woman then looked up, stating, "The only rooms available are the deluxe suites or the presidential suite." To which Rimuru replied, "The presidential suite will do. And can you send up a bottle of brandy, something nice with some ice?" The receptionist agreed, so Rimuru paid and the lady gave Rimuru and Seal their key cards for the room. Rimuru and Seal then made their way up to the room, still laughing and enjoying themselves. When they arrived, they entered a luxurious apartment with the bottle of brandy and a bucket of ice already waiting there for them. Rimuru and Seal, seeing this, decided to not waste any time and immediately cracked open the bottle and began drinking. The two spent most of the night drinking, laughing, and eventually flirting as they got drunker and drunker, until the two passed out in a drunken stupor. Chapter 11: Aftermath and Departure. The following morning, Rimuru slowly began to open his eyes, stating, "Ugh, my head." He slowly pushed himself up and realized he had been sleeping sideways, spread-eagle and naked across the bed. He then looked around for Seal, and when he couldn't see her, he called out to her, only to hear a thud come from behind him. It was the sound of Seal falling out of the bed. She then popped her head up, her eyes still barely open and her hair a mess, asking, "What happened?" To which Rimuru could only laugh as he responded, "Aha, aha, you fell out of the bed. Are you okay?" Seal didn't respond and laid back down on the ground, asking, "Oog, my head, what happened last night?" Rimuru then got up and walked over to the bathroom sink to splash his face with water, then responded to Seal, stating, "I've got no idea. I remember coming to the room and drinking a bit, then I've got nothing." Seal then decided to get up off the floor and walked over to the sink where Rimuru was and did the same, splashing her face with water. The two then just looked at themselves in the mirror for a moment before Rimuru said, "We look like shit." "Seal, I feel like shit." Seal's comment made Rimuru laugh a little, but he couldn't deny her, as he was feeling the same. The two then made their way to the kitchen and living room area, only to see it was a complete mess. There were half-eaten bowls of Mexican and Italian food everywhere, and the minibar was completely empty, with bottles of booze spread everywhere. Rimuru could only groan, seeing the sight before him and Seal as he stated, "This doesn't look good. Whatever we did last night, I think we went overboard." Seal nodded in agreement, and the two walked over to the couch and sat down. "Seal, so this is what a hangover feels like. I don't know how humans deal with this." Rimuru, "I don't want it anymore. We should probably turn our nullifications back on." Seal agreed. The two then turned their nullifications back on and instantly began to feel better. A minute later, they were back to their former selves. Rimuru, "Ah, that's better, back to my normal self." Seal, "Yes, I too feel back to normal." Rimuru, "Well, after we tidy this place up a little, let's go get some breakfast and get moving. I believe it's time we move on with our journey." Seal agreed. Seal then clicked her fingers, and all the empty bottles and half-eaten plates of food were placed neatly along the kitchen bench. The two then got dressed in casual clothes, left the room, and made their way to the checkout. When the two arrived at the check-in desk, they handed the lady their key card, and the woman stated their total bill came to $120,000. Both Rimuru and Seal were a little surprised but just accepted it. Rimuru paid the lady and they left the building. They then made their way outside, received the keys to their car, and departed from the hotel to head to a nice cafe along the harbor. There, Rimuru and Seal both ordered a big stack of pancakes with extra blueberries, whipped cream and maple syrup, with a side of coffee. The two both enjoyed their breakfast and departed the cafe. Rimuru then pulled into a quiet alleyway where the two got out of the car. Rimuru deconstructed the car, and the two then changed their appearance back to their normal selves. Rimuru then stuck his hand out for Seal, who reciprocated and took Rimuru's hand, and the two teleported back to Wakanda. They teleported back to the room T'Challa lent to them. There, Rimuru used his senses to see that T'Challa was in his office working on paperwork again. Rimuru and Seal then warped to just outside T'Challa's office and knocked on the door, with T'Challa telling them to come in. T'Challa, Ah, Rimuru and Seal, you're back. How was your night? Rimuru, it was good, maybe a little too good. T'Challa had a slightly confused look about him, hearing the last part of Rimuru's sentence, but breaking him out of his confusion. Rimuru continued to say, I believe the time has come for me and Seal to continue on our journey and leave this universe. T'Challa, I understand, but please at least let me and my family send you off. Rimuru agreed, and so T'Challa, along with his sister Shuri and their mother Ramonda, assembled just outside the palace to see Rimuru and seal off. Rimuru, again, I must thank you all for your warm hospitality toward me and my wife. Although our time was brief, we still very much enjoyed your company. T'Challa, please think nothing of it. If you or Lady Seal are ever in need, Wakanda is open for the both of you. Rimuru, we appreciate that, T'Challa, and should we ever be in this universe again, we won't miss a chance to pay you all a visit. Seal then opened a portal, and Rimuru quickly said, farewell. T'Challa, Shuri, and Ramonda, I wish you great fortune in your lives. Rimuru and Seal then took each other by the hand and were about to enter the portal when all of a sudden Rimuru remembered. Oh, before I forget, take this. Rimuru then pulled out the credit card he made when he stole that man's money and flicked it to T'Challa, who easily caught it between his fingers. He then looked at it and asked, what is this? Rimuru, just some insurance, my friend. You can never have enough money. Rimuru and Seal then entered the portal, disappearing from the world.